The day my daughter told me I was already dead, I was standing barefoot on cold marble, holding a platter of Thanksgiving turkey I had roasted myself. "I mean, legally," she said, not even looking up from her phone. "You might as well be." That was how it began. Not with screaming, not with tears, but with casual cruelty, delivered like a weather report. My name is Eleanor Whitmore. I was 63 years old that November, and I had lived in that colonial house outside Princeton, New Jersey, for nearly 3 decades. I bought it with my late husband, Daniel, back when the neighborhood was quiet and unfashionable. I stayed after he died, after the company dinners stopped, after the house became too big for one woman. I stayed because it held my life. My daughter Vanessa had moved back in 2 years earlier. She was 38, recently divorced, recently fired, and recently full of opinions about how I should be living the rest of my life. She said she came to help me. She said I needed someone. She said it was temporary. But that afternoon, with the smell of rosemary and butter still heavy in the air, she stood in my kitchen and informed me that my will was outdated, my judgment was questionable, and my presence was inconvenient. "Mom, you're slowing things down," she said. "This house, your accounts, your refusal to downsize, it's all very selfish." Selfish. The word echoed in my chest. Across the table sat my grandson Oliver, 11 years old, staring down at his plate like he was afraid his eyes might get him in trouble. His fork hovered, unmoving. I set the platter down slowly. My hands were shaking, but my voice stayed calm. Years of boardroom dinners with Daniel had trained me well. "What exactly do you mean by legally dead?" I asked. Vanessa sighed, finally meeting my eyes, irritation flickering across her face. "I mean, everything is already arranged. You just don't know it yet." That sentence lodged itself somewhere deep, an open wound, an unanswered question. That night, long after the dishes were cleared and Oliver was sent upstairs, I lay awake listening to the house breathe. The hum of the refrigerator, the tick of the hallway clock, Vanessa's footsteps pacing above me, restless, impatient. I replayed moments I had brushed aside before, the way she insisted on driving me to appointments, the way my mail sometimes arrived already opened, the way she spoke to my lawyer, Harold Klein, on my behalf, laughing too easily, touching his arm like they shared secrets. I told myself I was imagining things, that grief had made me suspicious, that aging had made me fearful. But fear has a sound when it's real. It sits behind your ribs and whispers at 3 a.m. The next morning, I found the safe in my bedroom slightly ajar. Inside were photocopies I had never made, a power of attorney I did not remember signing. My signature was there, unmistakably mine, written during a hospital stay after a minor fall the previous spring. Vanessa had been there that day, smiling, rubbing my shoulder, telling me not to worry. I sat on the edge of the bed, paper trembling in my hands, and felt something inside me go very still. This was not neglect. This was preparation. Downstairs, Oliver's laugh floated up from the kitchen as Vanessa poured cereal, acting like nothing in the world was wrong. I folded the papers carefully and slid them back into the safe. Then I closed it, locked it, and placed the key in my pocket. I did not confront her. Not yet. Revenge, I would soon learn, is not loud in the beginning. It is patient, and it starts with watching. Once you realize someone is planning your erasure, you begin to take inventory, not of objects, of truths. I started small. I watched Vanessa the way I used to watch competitors when Daniel still ran his firm. Quietly, without reacting. I nodded when she criticized my cooking. I smiled when she reminded me how lucky I was to have her. But inside, I was counting. The first thing I confirmed was the money. One Tuesday afternoon, while Vanessa was at a yoga class she could not afford, I logged into my primary account. I had not checked it properly in months. I trusted her. That was my first mistake. There were withdrawals. Small ones, always under 100, spread out, clever. Groceries, gas, medical supplies. Add them together, and it was nearly half my monthly pension. Worse, there was a transfer from an account I rarely looked at. The education fund Daniel and I had set up for Oliver the week he was born. Money I had guarded like a promise. Vanessa had accessed it. Twice. I sat there staring at the screen, my tea going cold beside me, and felt the betrayal settle into my bones. This was not desperation. This was entitlement. That evening, she complained that the chicken was dry and asked if I could start contributing more, since we're all under pressure. Oliver glanced at me, eyes wide, searching my face. I said nothing. Later that night, I made my first call. Harold Klein answered on the second ring. He had handled Daniel's estate, our trust, the house deed. He sounded surprised to hear from me directly. "Eleanor," he said. "Vanessa didn't mention you were concerned." "She wouldn't," I replied. "I need to see you. Privately." There was a pause, then a shift in his tone. "I'll clear my morning." The next day, I sat across from him in his quiet office and laid everything out. The documents, the withdrawals, the timing. His expression darkened with every page. "This power of attorney is extremely broad," he said carefully. "But it is revocable. Immediately." "Do it," I said. He looked at me for a long moment. "You understand this will cause conflict." I thought of Thanksgiving, of marble floors, of my daughter's voice telling me I was already dead. "I understand," I said. "Proceed." By the time I left his office, my will was being rewritten. Vanessa was removed entirely. Everything I owned was placed into a trust for Oliver, overseen by a neutral trustee until he turned 25. Inheritance, excluded, permanently. That was the legal part. The emotional part came later. On the drive home, I stopped by a real estate office I had passed 100 times without noticing. A young agent named Marcus greeted me with polite enthusiasm. When he told me the current value of my home, I almost laughed. Vanessa had been wrong. Or lying. The house was worth far more than she thought. I told him I wanted discretion, speed, silence. He nodded. "We can do that." That night, Vanessa announced she had scheduled an appointment with a neurologist, just to be safe. I met her gaze across the kitchen table, seeing the calculation behind her smile. "Of course," I said softly. "Whatever you think is best." Her eyes narrowed, just for a second. Upstairs, Oliver was doing homework, alone. I watched him through the doorway, small shoulders hunched, and made myself a promise. I would not let him grow up thinking this was normal. That respect was optional. That love meant endurance. As I turned off the light, my phone buzzed with a message from Marcus. Multiple interested buyers. Strong offers. Quick close. I smiled into the dark. Vanessa thought she was managing my ending. She had no idea I was writing a beginning. The neurologist's office smelled like antiseptic and lavender. A combination meant to soothe, but somehow made my stomach tighten. Vanessa insisted on sitting beside me, her knee angled toward mine, her hand resting lightly on my arm, as if we were a united front. To anyone watching, it would have looked like devotion. To me, it felt like a leash. "This is just routine," she told the nurse, smiling too brightly. "My mom's been a little forgetful lately." I said nothing. Silence had become my sharpest weapon. The doctor, a man in his early 40s with careful eyes, began asking questions. The date, the president, a sequence of numbers to repeat backward. I answered calmly, steadily, my mind clearer than it had been in years. Vanessa interrupted twice. "She sometimes forgets to eat," she said. "She gets confused with bills." Each time, the doctor glanced at me, waiting for confirmation. "That's not accurate," I said evenly. Vanessa laughed softly. "See? Defensive." The words stung, but I held my ground. After 40 minutes, the doctor leaned back. "Mrs. Whitmore shows no signs of cognitive impairment. Her memory, reasoning, and judgment are all intact." Vanessa's smile froze. "But stress can mask symptoms," she said quickly. "Don't you think further evaluation?" "There is no medical basis for further testing," he replied, polite but firm. In the elevator afterward, Vanessa was quiet. Her jaw was tight, fingers tapping her phone. "You were unusually sharp in there," she said at last. "I've always been sharp," I replied. "You just stopped noticing." That night, she didn't yell. She didn't accuse. She did something worse. She cried. "I'm just scared," she said, sitting at the edge of my bed like a frightened child. "I don't want to lose you." I almost believed her. Almost. But fear doesn't open safes. Fear doesn't move money. I said nothing. I let her cry. And when she left, I locked my door. The next morning, while she slept in, I finalized the sale of the house, Marcus called to confirm. The buyers wanted a quick close. 2 weeks. I told him to proceed. I spent that day packing only what mattered. Photographs, letters, the watch Daniel wore every day of our marriage. I left the furniture, the china, the things Vanessa thought defined wealth. That evening, Oliver found me in the study. "Grandma," he asked quietly, "are you sick?" "No," I said, kneeling to his level. "I'm finally getting better." He frowned. "Mom says you might have to go somewhere else." I looked at him, really looked, and saw the confusion etched into his young face. "Sometimes," I said carefully, "grown-ups make plans without explaining them well. But I need you to know something. None of this is because of you." He nodded slowly, not fully understanding, but trusting me. Trust. The thing Vanessa had burned through without realizing its value. That night, I wrote 3 letters. One for Oliver, one for Vanessa, and one for myself. When I finished, the house felt lighter, as if it knew. I slept without dreams. The next morning, Vanessa found the for sale sign outside. Her scream cut through the neighborhood like shattered glass. "What did you do?" she demanded, standing barefoot on the front lawn, hair wild, phone clenched in her hand. I watched her through the window before opening the door. Calm, measured, detached. "I sold my house," I said. "You can't do that without me," she snapped. "I live here." "You live here," I corrected, because I allowed it. Her face drained of color. "This is insane," she said. "You're proving exactly what I told everyone." "Everyone?" I asked. She flinched. I stepped aside and let her storm into the kitchen, where Oliver sat at the table, cereal untouched. "Mommy?" he whispered. Vanessa turned to him, voice sharp. "Go upstairs." "No," I said firmly. "He can stay." She stared at me as if seeing a stranger. "You don't get to decide anymore," she hissed. "I always did," I replied. "You just convinced yourself otherwise." She laughed, brittle and panicked. "You think this is revenge? You think running away fixes anything?" I slid an envelope across the counter. "What's this?" she asked. "Your copy of the revised will," I said. "And the trust documents." She opened it, read, froze. "I'm excluded?" Her voice cracked. "You can't do that. I'm your daughter." "And Oliver is my grandson," I said quietly. "He is my responsibility now." Her eyes darted to him. "You did this behind my back," she said. "After everything I sacrificed." I thought of opened mail, missing money, a neurologist's office. "You planned my life without my consent," I said. "This is simply me reclaiming it." She lunged for my arm. "I'll fight this. I'll take you to court." "I've already spoken to a lawyer," I replied. "You don't have a case." For the first time, fear replaced anger. "You need me," she said, voice dropping. "You'll be alone." I smiled, just slightly. "I was alone with you," I said. That was worse. That afternoon, she packed in silence. Oliver watched from the stairs, eyes wet, confused. I knelt beside him. "This isn't goodbye," I said. "This is change." "Will you still call me?" he asked. "Every day," I promised. Vanessa stood in the doorway, suitcases by her feet, rage and desperation warring on her face. "This isn't over," she said. "No," I agreed. "It's just beginning." When the door closed behind her, the house exhaled. 2 weeks later, it would no longer be mine. But in that moment, standing alone in the quiet, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Control. And somewhere deep inside, karma was already clearing its throat. The first week after Vanessa left, the house felt like a cathedral after the congregation has gone home. Every sound echoed. Every memory lingered. I did not chase her. That was the part she never anticipated. My phone rang constantly at first. Voicemails stacked up like accusations. "You can't do this to me. You're punishing Oliver. This is elder abuse, Mom. People will see that." I listened to each message once. Then I archived them. Silence, I was learning, is a language manipulators do not speak well. What surprised me most was Oliver. Every evening at exactly 7, my phone rang, and his name lit up the screen. He spoke softly, carefully, as if afraid his words might be taken away. "Grandma, Mom says you're angry." "I'm not angry," I told him. "I'm honest." "What does that mean?" "It means I stopped pretending everything was fine when it wasn't." He was quiet for a moment. Then, "I like when you tell the truth." That night, I cried for the first time since Thanksgiving. Not from regret, from release. The buyers came the following Saturday. A couple in their early 40s with polite smiles and children who ran through the halls without fear. They saw possibility, not history. As they walked through the house, I followed slowly, touching the walls one last time. The banister Daniel had refinished himself. The window seat where Oliver used to read beside me. When they left, Marcus handed me the final paperwork. "You're doing the right thing," he said gently. "I can tell." I nodded. I didn't trust my voice. The closing was scheduled for the following Friday. That Wednesday, Harold Klein called. "Vanessa has retained counsel," he said. "They're alleging undue influence and diminished capacity." I laughed. A real laugh. It startled me. "Let them try," I said. "They will request an emergency injunction," he continued. "It won't hold, but you should be prepared." "Prepared how?" "To disappear," he said softly. "For a while." That night, I packed a single suitcase. Not fleeing, choosing. I left the letters on the kitchen table, along with the keys. When I closed the door behind me, I did not look back. I drove north, toward Vermont, to a cousin I had not seen in years. A woman who knew me before I became careful, before I became quiet. Vanessa discovered my absence the next morning. Her calls turned frantic, then furious, then pleading. "Mom, this isn't funny. You're proving you're unstable. Come home. We can fix this." But there was no home left to return to. Not the way she meant it. From my cousin's porch, wrapped in a borrowed sweater, I watched the leaves fall and felt something settle inside me. For the first time, Vanessa had nothing to push against, and that terrified her. The injunction was denied. The sale proceeded. The money transferred into the trust, and with every legal confirmation, Vanessa lost another illusion of control. She sent one final message that week. "You think you've won, but you've ruined everything." I smiled at the screen. No, I thought. I finally stopped losing. That night, I slept deeply, without listening for footsteps overhead. In the quiet, I began to plan the next part. Not revenge. Reckoning. Vanessa showed up at Harold's office the following Monday, with mascara streaked down her cheeks, and a narrative rehearsed to perfection. I wasn't there. That was deliberate. "She claims you were manipulated," Harold told me later. "By a real estate agent. By me. By imaginary friends." "And did you show her the evidence?" I asked. "I showed her everything," he said. "Bank records, medical evaluations, your handwritten notes." There was a pause. "She didn't deny it," he added. "She reframed it. Of course she did." Vanessa had always been good at that. Turning theft into necessity, cruelty into concern, control into love. But love does not leave receipts. I had them. Over the next few weeks, I assembled a timeline. Dates, transfers, correspondence, everything documented, everything undeniable. Harold filed a formal report regarding the unauthorized withdrawals from Oliver's account. That was when the tone changed. Vanessa called me from a number I didn't recognize. I answered. "Mom," she said, voice shaking. "Why are you doing this?" "I'm protecting my grandson," I replied. "Something you forgot how to do." "You're destroying me," she whispered. "No," I said. "I'm letting you face consequences." She hung up. 2 days later, Oliver called, crying. "Grandma, Mommy lost her job." I closed my eyes. "What happened?" I asked gently. She was late. A lot. She was yelling at people. The boss said she scared customers. I felt a familiar ache. Pity trying to sneak in. But pity without accountability is just another form of permission. "I'm sorry, sweetheart," I said. "That must feel scary. Are we going to be okay?" I thought of the trust, the savings, the safety net she had tried to steal. "Yes," I said. "You are." That afternoon, Harold called again. "Vanessa wants to negotiate," he said. "She's asking for a meeting." I considered it. Carefully. "Only with conditions," I said. The meeting was set for the following Friday. Neutral ground, conference room, doors open. Vanessa arrived thinner, tired. Her confidence cracked, but not gone. She sat across from me, hands clasped tightly, eyes darting. "I didn't mean for it to go this far," she said. "Neither did I replied. "But here we are." "I was under pressure," she said quickly. "Single mother, no support." "You had support," I said. You abused it. Her jaw tightened.
What do you want? She asked.
The question hung between us, heavy. I want you to stop lying, I said. To Oliver, to yourself. She scoffed. And then what? Then I said, you rebuild your life without standing on mine. She stared at me, truly stared, as if seeing me clearly for the first time. And if I can't? She asked. Then you don't get access, I said simply. To the trust, to my time, to my forgiveness. Silence. In that moment, I saw fear give way to something else, understanding. The meeting ended without hugs, without promises. But as she stood to leave, she hesitated. You're not the woman I thought you were, she said. I met her gaze. I never was, I replied. You just needed me to be smaller. She left without another word. As I walked out into the autumn air, I felt the shift. The truth had landed, and karma, slow and deliberate, had finally found her address. Vanessa did not collapse the way I once imagined she would. She adapted. That was what frightened me most. 2 weeks after our meeting, she reappeared in Oliver's life, wearing a softer version of herself. Fewer sharp words, more hugs. Homemade dinners posted carefully on social media. A curated redemption. Mommy says she's changing, Oliver told me one evening over the phone. She says families shouldn't give up on each other. The sentence landed exactly where it was designed to. I hope she is, I replied carefully. Change takes time. What if she really means it this time? I closed my eyes, choosing each word like glass. Then her actions will keep matching her words. That's how you'll know. Vanessa began calling me again. Not begging, not raging, testing. I'm seeing a counselor, she said in one message. I found a part-time position. I've been reading about toxic family patterns. Each update carried an unspoken question. Am I back in? I did not answer immediately. Distance had taught me something critical. Space reveals intention. Then came the invitation. She wanted me to attend Oliver's school holiday program. Front row, public. A visible reconciliation. I consulted Harold before responding. Be careful, he warned. Public gestures create pressure. I thought of Oliver on stage, scanning the crowd. I'll attend, I said, but I won't perform. The auditorium buzzed with parents and grandparents, folding chairs, paper snowflakes, the smell of glue and anticipation. Vanessa spotted me immediately. Relief flickered across her face before she masked it with composure. Oliver ran to me before the program began, arms tight around my waist. You came, he whispered. I always will, I said. Vanessa approached slowly, rehearsed smile in place. Thank you for coming, Mom. I nodded. No embrace, no warmth. During the performance, I felt her watching me more than the children, measuring reactions, counting points. Afterward, she suggested coffee. I have plans, I said. She swallowed disappointment. Another time. Perhaps, I replied. That night, I received a call from Harold. She's requesting partial access to the trust, he said, citing hardship. I laughed, bitter and amused. She's learned nothing, I said. On the contrary, he replied. She's learned how to pivot. The next morning, I made a decision. I contacted the trustee directly and authorized a new provision. Funds could be used for Oliver's needs only. Tuition, healthcare, enrichment. Nothing discretionary. Nothing she could touch. That afternoon, Vanessa called, furious. You set me up, she snapped. You're humiliating me. No, I said calmly. I'm setting boundaries. You're enjoying this, she accused, punishing me. I'm protecting what you tried to take, I replied. There was a pause. Then her voice dropped. You think everyone sees you as some hero, she said. They don't. They see a bitter old woman who cut her daughter out. Let them, I said. Truth doesn't need applause. She hung up. 2 days later, Oliver's teacher called. Mrs. Whitmore, she said gently. Oliver seems anxious. He's worried about choosing sides. The words pierced me. That evening, I sat at my kitchen table, alone, staring at the trust documents. Revenge had felt clean at first. Precise, deserved. But justice, I was learning, carries collateral weight. I called Vanessa that night. We need to talk, I said. Not about money, about Oliver. She hesitated, then agreed. The meeting was set for Sunday. As I hung up, a familiar tension returned. This chapter was not about winning. It was about what winning would cost. We met in a quiet diner halfway between our homes. Neutral ground again. Vinyl booths, bad coffee. No witnesses who mattered. Vanessa arrived early, tapping her nails against the table, eyes darting toward the door every few seconds. Control requires anticipation. She had always relied on it. I slid into the booth across from her and met her gaze. "This is about Oliver," I said before she could speak. She exhaled sharply. "Of course it is. He's carrying our conflict," I continued. "That stops now." Her mouth tightened. "So what do you want? Shared holidays? Weekly dinners? You back in my life?" I shook my head. "I want you to stop using him as leverage." She laughed, hollow. "I'm his mother." "And I'm his grandmother," I replied. "And between us, only one of us has kept him out of the middle." Her eyes flashed. "You abandoned him." "No," I said firmly. "I left an abusive situation. There is a difference." "The word abusive," she scoffed. "That's dramatic." I leaned forward. "You stole. You manipulated. You isolated. You attempted to strip me of autonomy." Her fingers curled around her mug. "That's not abuse," she said quietly. "That's survival." "And that," I said, "is the lie you tell yourself." Silence stretched. "I didn't think you'd fight back," she admitted finally. "You never did before." "There it is," I said softly. She looked away. "I need you to understand something," I continued. "I am not punishing you. I am refusing to be harmed again." Her voice wavered. "And what about me? What am I supposed to do now?" "For once," I said, "figure that out without taking from me." Her eyes filled, and for a moment I saw the daughter I raised. Afraid, small, human. But I had learned not to confuse vulnerability with accountability. "Oliver will stay with you," I added. "I will remain present. Calls, visits, support. But the money stays locked. The manipulation stops." "And if I fail?" she asked. "Then the distance grows," I said simply. She nodded slowly. No argument, no threats. When we stood to leave, she hesitated. "I really thought you were weak," she said. I smiled, not unkindly. "I was patient," I replied. "You mistook that for weakness." As I walked out into the cold air, my phone buzzed. A message from Marcus. "The buyers are moving in next week. They asked if you'd like to see the house one last time." I looked at the screen, then back at the diner behind me. "No," I typed. "I've already said goodbye." That night, Oliver called. "Grandma," he said softly. "Mom cried today, but she didn't yell." I closed my eyes. "That's a start," I said. As I hung up, I felt it. The shift, not victory, balance. And somewhere, deep beneath the layers of consequence and choice, karma was no longer circling. It had settled in. The first morning I woke up without bracing myself for a confrontation, I knew something fundamental had changed. Sunlight spilled across the unfamiliar bedroom, softer somehow, as if it didn't expect anything from me. I had moved into a small rental near the river. Nothing grand, nothing symbolic, just mine. No echoes of old arguments, no footsteps overhead. No doors slammed in anger. Peace has a sound when you finally hear it. It sounds like breathing. I made coffee slowly, standing barefoot on hardwood floors that had never heard my name shouted in frustration. As the kettle clicked off, I realized how long it had been since I did anything without calculating someone else's reaction. That was the hidden cost of betrayal. It doesn't just steal money or trust. It steals your instincts. I began rebuilding my days deliberately. Morning walks, volunteering at the local literacy center twice a week, lunches with women who spoke openly about their lives, instead of competing in quiet suffering. They knew pieces of my story, not the details, just enough. One afternoon, a woman named Carol leaned across the table and said, "You know, Eleanor, most people your age are afraid to start over." I smiled into my tea. Most people mistake endurance for virtue. Oliver visited every other weekend. We cooked together. He told me about school, about friends, about how his mother was trying really hard. I never contradicted him. Children don't need commentary. They need consistency. Vanessa called less often. When she did, her tone had shifted. Less entitlement, more uncertainty. I got a full-time offer, she said one evening. It's not glamorous, but it's stable. That matters, I replied. I'm still seeing the counselor, she added, as if waiting for approval. Good, I said, and meant it. She didn't ask for money again. That was when I knew the lesson had begun to stick. But karma rarely finishes in one act. 3 months later, Harold called with news. Vanessa's ex-husband has filed a motion, he said. Custody adjustment. My stomach tightened. Why now? He's claiming instability, Harold continued. Financial, emotional. I closed my eyes. The irony was almost poetic. Does he have grounds? I asked. Enough to cause trouble, he replied, but not enough to win outright. I knew what this was. Consequences don't always arrive from the direction you expect. That night, Vanessa called me. For real this time. No performance. He's trying to take Oliver, she said, voice cracking. He says I'm unfit. I listened, didn't interrupt. I know I don't deserve your help, she continued. But he's worse. You know that. I did. This was not about rescuing her. This was about protecting a child. I will testify, I said finally. For Oliver, not for you, she cried. Quietly. Honestly, the hearing was set for early spring. As the date approached, I prepared. Not emotionally, strategically. I gathered records, counseling attendance, employment history, school reports, and yes, documentation of the changes she had made, not to erase her past, to prove her present. On the morning of the hearing, Vanessa sat beside me, hands shaking. I don't know how to thank you, she whispered. By continuing to change, I replied. The judge listened carefully, asked precise questions, reviewed evidence. When it was my turn to speak, I stood tall. My daughter made serious mistakes, I said. She hurt me. She crossed lines. But she faced consequences, and she did not run from them. Vanessa stared at me, stunned. I believe children deserve stability, I continued. Not perfection. Accountability. The ruling came swiftly. Custody remained unchanged. Outside the courtroom, Vanessa hugged me without warning. I won't waste this, she said. I believed her. That night, alone in my quiet apartment, I poured a glass of wine and sat by the window. Revenge had brought me clarity. Justice had brought me peace. But this moment, watching a woman learn to stand without leaning on my spine, brought something else. Release. The final stage was coming. I could feel it. The letter arrived on a Tuesday, unassuming, cream-colored. Addressed in handwriting I recognized instantly. Harold Klein. I knew before opening it that this was not routine. Inside was a single page and a note written in his careful script. Eleanor, I recommend we speak as soon as possible. I called him immediately. The trustee has completed the annual review, he said. There's something you should know. My pulse quickened. Go on. Vanessa requested a formal accounting, he continued. Not access. Transparency. That alone told me how far she had come. And? I asked. She also submitted a statement, he said. Voluntarily. He read it aloud. She acknowledged the financial abuse, the manipulation, the harm caused. She relinquished any future claim to the trust, permanently, in writing. I closed my eyes. Why would she do that? I asked. Because, Harold said gently, she understands now that inheritance is not a reward. It's a responsibility. We met that afternoon. Vanessa looked different, not fixed, grounded. I needed to do it, she said, hands folded in her lap. For Oliver. And for me. You didn't have to, I replied. I did, she insisted. If I ever fall back into old habits, there needs to be a line I can't cross. I studied her face. The fear was gone, replaced by resolve. Then this is my response, I said. I slid a document across the table. Her eyes widened as she read. What is this? She whispered. A revision, I said. Effective immediately. I had amended the trust, not to include her, but to create a provision. If Vanessa maintained consistent employment, continued counseling, and upheld healthy boundaries for 5 consecutive years, she would become a paid administrator for Oliver's educational foundation. Not owner, not beneficiary. Steward. A role earned, not inherited. Tears spilled down her cheeks. "You didn't have to give me anything," she said. "I didn't," I replied. "I gave you an opportunity." She nodded, overwhelmed. "I won't fail him," she said. "I know," I replied. And I did. That evening, Oliver called. "Grandma," he said excitedly. "Mom says we're all going to be okay." I smiled. I think she's right. Later, alone, I reviewed my own will one last time. Everything was in order, not just legally, emotionally. I had been excluded once, reduced, dismissed, but exclusion had taught me something powerful. Legacy is not what you leave behind. It's what you refuse to pass on. The cycle stopped with me, and in stopping it, I didn't just protect my grandson. I reclaimed myself. If you've made it this far, and this story stirred something in you, don't keep it silent. Like this video if you believe dignity has no expiration date. Comment if you've ever had to choose yourself over family. And subscribe for more stories where betrayal meets karma, and quiet strength always has the final word. The invitation arrived on thick ivory paper, heavier than it needed to be, as if the weight of it might stop me from opening it. Vanessa's name was printed neatly in the corner, followed by one I did not recognize at first. Ethan Marshall. I sat at my kitchen table for a long time, the envelope untouched, my coffee cooling beside me. Life had grown quiet in a way that felt earned. Predictable mornings, work that mattered, evenings filled with books and phone calls with Oliver, who was now almost 13, and developing opinions about everything from music to politics. I had not expected this. When I finally opened the envelope, my hands were steady. Vanessa was getting married. Not impulsively, not desperately. The invitation mentioned a small ceremony the following spring, held at a vineyard in upstate New York. Intimate, thoughtful, nothing like the spectacle she once demanded. And at the bottom, handwritten, in her own careful script, "Mom, I would really like you there, but only if it brings you peace." I leaned back in my chair and closed my eyes. This was the final test. Not of her, of me. The old version of myself would have read hidden motives into every word. A trap, a performance, a way back in. The woman I had become asked a different question. What do I want? That night, I called Carol from the Literacy Center, the woman who had become my closest friend over the past year. "You don't owe anyone your presence," she reminded me gently. But sometimes showing up is not surrender, it's closure. I thought about Oliver, walking down an aisle, taller now, steadier. I thought about Vanessa, standing at the edge of something new, not asking for forgiveness, not demanding approval, just offering an invitation. I RSVP'd, yes. The wedding day arrived, bathed in early spring light. The vineyard was modest but elegant, no excess, no pretense. When Vanessa saw me, she froze for half a second. Then she smiled. Not relief, gratitude. "You came," she said softly. "I wanted to," I replied. And that was the truth. Ethan approached, nervous but respectful. He shook my hand like it mattered. "I've heard a lot about you," he said. "All good," I smiled. Then she's been honest. During the ceremony, I watched Vanessa's face as she spoke her vows. There was no desperation in her voice, no hunger for validation, just presence. I realized then that I was not watching my daughter begin a marriage. I was watching her finish a transformation. At the reception, Oliver sat beside me, taller than my shoulder now. "Grandma," he whispered. "Mom looks happy in a real way." I squeezed his hand. That's the best kind. When it was time for the mother-daughter dance, Vanessa hesitated, then crossed the room toward me. "Would you?" she asked quietly. Every eye turned. This was the moment that almost broke me. I stood. We danced slowly, awkwardly at first, then more easily, as if our bodies remembered something our minds had forgotten. "I know I hurt you," she whispered. "I know I can never undo it." "I know," I replied, "and I'm still here." When the song ended, I returned to my seat without fanfare. No applause, no reconciliation montage, just quiet acceptance. As I left that night, I did not feel like a woman who had forgiven everything. I felt like a woman who had survived it. And that was enough. The morning after the wedding, I woke up alone in my hotel room and felt no emptiness. That was how I knew the story had truly ended. I returned to my life without needing to explain anything to anyone. the literacy center, my morning walks, the small apartment by the river that still felt like a sanctuary rather than a compromise. Oliver called every Sunday. Vanessa called once a week. Ethan sent Christmas cards with thoughtful notes. Nothing was forced. Nothing was owed. Years passed quietly, the way meaningful years often do. Oliver grew into a young man with strong opinions and gentle manners. He never raised his voice. He never dismissed older women. When I asked him once why, he shrugged. "You taught me how not to," he said. The trust matured exactly as planned, used for education, travel, experiences that widened his world instead of shrinking it. Vanessa fulfilled every condition. 5 years of steady work, counseling, boundaries. She never asked for shortcuts. When the time came for her to step into the administrative role, she did so with humility, not pride. On my 70th birthday, she gave me a simple gift, a journal. On the first page, she had written, "Thank you for stopping the cycle." That night, sitting alone with a cup of chamomile tea, I reflected on everything that had brought me here. I had been betrayed, manipulated, excluded from a future that was mine by right. And in fighting back, I had discovered something far more powerful than revenge. I had discovered authorship. I was no longer a supporting character in someone else's narrative. I was the woman who rewrote the ending. If you are listening to this story and feel something stir inside you, let it. Let it remind you that it is never too late to choose yourself, never too late to set boundaries, never too late to demand respect. If this story resonated with you, please like this video, share your thoughts or your own story in the comments, and subscribe for more stories where justice unfolds slowly, karma arrives quietly, and women reclaim their power at any age. Because dignity has no expiration date.